What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and I don't think, Locals, Patreon. And all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Larry Johnson, good to see you. Thanks for taking time as always.
Hey, Michael, always a pleasure.
I
see what we get into today, huh?
There's a lot. There's a lot that's been going on over the. I mean, I don't want to start off the conversation saying there's a lot going on because I've been called out on that. But really, over the last few days, there's been. I mean, it's moving very, very quickly.
Yeah, and a lot of not so things that aren't so good.
No, so I want to start off with, I had Ron Ons on my show last week, and your name came up in that conversation in reference to, the Charlie Kirk trial started last week. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm probably paraphrasing and butchering, so that's why I want to ask you, and you correct me. But he had talked about how he had heard you in an interview where you were discussing. It's odd that the FBI is so involved in this, or was so involved in the arrest of Tyler Robinson.
Yeah, well, look, which story is it? If Tyler Robinson, who is a native of Utah, shoots and kills Charlie Kirk, he has not crossed state lines. It's a simple act of murder. FBI doesn't do simple acts of murder. It's really not part of their charter. That falls under the responsibility of state and local authorities. Now, if there's a situation that arises where there's some concern about foreign involvement or some gang operating across state lines, then under those circumstances, the FBI would get involved. And I brought this up in reference, recalling what happened to Seth Rich. The government story is that this was a simple robbery gone bad. That Seth Rich just unfortunately happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Very sad. Except then the FBI's Washington field office was heavily involved, as was Peter Strzok of Russiagate fame. Peter Strzok was, I think he was the head of their counterintelligence division at FBI. That works with foreign sources. So the fact that in that Seth Rich case you had the FBI direct involvement tells you right away that this was a foreign operation. This had nothing to do with domestic robbery. So similarly, when the FBI suddenly shows up, gets involved, it's one thing to pick the phone up and say, hey, geez, this is awful what happened to Charlie Kirk. Do you guys need any help? We're happy to lend resources. To my knowledge, the state police and the local police there in Provo didn't reach out to the FBI and say, oh, help, we can't handle this. There was none of that. So it raises the question, why did the FBI feel the need to insert itself in something that was a domestic operation, or should have been on paper? Which then brings you back to there are, as Candace Owens has been very effective at highlighting so many of the oddities surrounding this murder of Charlie Kirk. And most importantly, that now the revelation that Kirk, the day before he was killed, it was predicted that he was going to be killed, that they, quote, they wanted him dead. Well, who are they? I believe it's the Zionists wanted him dead because he was such an influential political figure, and his change of heart, his disgust with what he saw the Zionists doing to the Palestinian people had led him to the point that he was no longer going to submit himself to their control. So at that point, he became expendable. I think that's a valid, viable path of inquiry that ought to be explored, because they certainly had the motive, they certainly have the means, and it's not the first time that the government of Israel has been involved with the assassination of an American political figure. Ample evidence points to their role as well in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And that was an issue over Kennedy's efforts to stop their nuclear program.
Well, and the other questions that come up in my head since hearing about this, with my conversation with Ron, I thought, John Lennon, when he was killed, was the FBI? Did they do a press conference?
No.
Malcolm
X?
I
don't think so.
Malcolm X?
No. Yeah, I don't think so. And Malcolm X, I don't recall. That's a good question. Yeah,
Martin Luther King?
Let me just quickly look at, Martin Luther King, yes. Has the FBI involved the of X killing? Let's just see what the answer is. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Yep, it says the FBI was involved, but it said the evidence has emerged over the years. The FBI closely surveilled Malcolm X before his assassination and had multiple informants in and around the organization and at the Audubon Ballroom on the day he was killed. Later reviews by the Manhattan District Attorney concluded the FBI, along with New York police, withheld key evidence during the original murder prosecutions, including material pointing to other suspects and revealing that several witnesses were FBI informants. So, yeah, possibly was the FBI involved with killing Malcolm X? Potentially, yeah.
But even a press conference after he was killed stating, we're taking over, or we're involved, or we're in charge. I don't think there was any of that.
No. So yeah, they sort of, I think they stayed out of the limelight for a reason. But yeah, again, what happened with Charlie Kirk, very unusual, and Kash Patel has just revealed himself to be a total clown. Jiminy Christmas. Just an embarrassment.
This episode is brought to you by McIlvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffeeandamike. What are your thoughts on how Turning Point has responded since all this? This weekend in Phoenix is they have their annual AmFest, and it's occurring. And Tucker's speaking, Ben Shapiro is speaking, sold out.
So is Tucker going to speak this weekend?
As far as I know, he's still the headline.
Huh. Yeah, I thought that they were trying to get rid of him, keep him away. So that's interesting.
I don't think anybody would go if he wasn't there.
Yeah, no, I think he definitely would be a big draw. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, no, look, Turning Point is imploding, and the conduct, the lies, the demonstrable lies that people associated with Turning Point have told with respect regarding the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And they've just left so many unanswered questions. And, the attempt to throw shade all over Candace Owens and pretend like she's the problem for asking questions. She's the problem. Please. This is beyond embarrassing. it really raises questions. And there also appears there's some financial motives that implicit in all this as well. When you start digging beneath the surface, to discover that um, there, there were audits that were supposed to be done that weren't done. There was money being siphoned off into other organizations connected to Turning Point USA. Lots of legitimate questions, and instead of tackling those legitimate questions, they've decided to condemn and accuse Candace Owens of being some sort of subversive.
Yeah, what I find I find funny right now is people are blaming Candace Owens. If Tyler Robinson gets acquitted, it's going to be her fault.
Yeah, well, Tyler Robinson will be acquitted because, and if I'm his defense attorney, all I have to do is put up the video that Chris Martinson, he's made 2 videos that raise very reasonable doubts about the government's account of what happened. Starting with the claim that it was a Mauser 30-06 rifle that was used to kill Charlie Kirk. There's no way, absolutely no way. The story doesn't add up. From the time the shot is taken, here's what I haven't really heard anybody talk about this, and it's so critical. In order for Tyler Robinson to have taken that shot, he had to have done advanced surveillance of the site. Why? Well, one, how do you know where Charlie Kirk is going to be sitting? How do you know what the distance is? Anytime you're starting to shoot a rifle out at a distance past 50 yards, and you're using an optic, you need to zero it. What do I mean by zeroing a rifle? You want to make sure that when you put the crosshairs, that you're looking through a scope and you get the crosshairs, and you put them at a point on the target, and then you press the trigger and fire, that the bullet should hit where you were aiming. And as distances change, the aim point changes. And if the rifle is not zeroed, for example, at 100 yards, if you're shooting at a target and you're aiming at the dead center of it, and the bullet hole is to the right and up, like say at the 1 o'clock position, you need to make adjustments on that optic, which they allow you to adjust for what they call elevation, up and down, and windage, movement right to left. So, you zero that in. Once you got it zeroed and you're confident about where you need to aim at 140 yards, then you can take that shot with confidence. But the way they tell the story is that he ran off with Grandpa's rifle, hadn't zeroed it, and boom, got off a precise shot from 140 yards, and then immediately got up, disassembled a rifle that's very difficult to disassemble in record amount of time, spread it across the roof, hid the rifle in the woods, reassembling it in the process. I mean, none of this adds up. But the fact that he would have had to have done advanced surveillance of the site, reconnaissance, to know where he was going to be shooting from, knowing how do I get in there, how do I get out, what's the plan. This thing was professionally planned. This was not just a spur of the moment. Hey, I'm pissed at this Charlie Kirk because he said disrespectful things about my boyfriend who's a girl, or he's a he and thinks he's a girl. I'm not sure, but with all the gender confusion, I'm going to kill Charlie Kirk. Okay, you're just not buying it. The story is ridiculous.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that this kid woke up that morning and decided, I'm taking him out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It is just You know, it doesn't make any sense. But, they go with it.
But there are people on the right, big media heads that are saying, "Oh, I watched, Jack Posobiec. I watched, my friend Charlie Kirk get shot." It's like, well, I haven't seen any video of this kid firing the gun. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Um, these people have said we're going to go with the narrative, stick with the narrative. Okay, if that's the way you want to roll, go for it. But it just, too many holes.
So you think the likelihood he'll get off for this? He'll get acquitted?
Yeah, because you got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he's the one that took the shot. Good God, there's so much doubt you can sow into this, apart from the fact that the bullet that allegedly was used should have torn Charlie's head off. It didn't, stop. The skin didn't stop it. I mean, this idiot Nick Fuentes claiming that it bounced off the skin. Oh, for God's sake. He's just another soy boy instead of recognizing, not being smart enough to know when to keep his mouth shut. He opines on something that he has zero experience with.
What about people are blaming Candace Owens if the Republicans lose the midterms too? I've been hearing that circulating around over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Blame the popcorn vendor who was at the Kansas City Chiefs game for the Chiefs' loss. Okay? Doesn't have anything about to do with the performance on the field of the players. No. It's the spectators in the stands. They're the ones at fault. Yeah, just nonsense. The people, the reason they're going so hard after Candace is that she has exposed this Zionist project. I maintain that Zionism is as pernicious and evil as communism. And I don't think it's a mere coincidence that many of the early advocates of Zionism came out of the same milieu as Karl Marx and Engels. Let's call them the fathers of communism. So Zionism is a pernicious curse, and it's caused a lot of death, a lot of destruction. And it continues to be, it fights for survival regardless of the consequences to those who try to oppose it.
As we're at the end of 2025, what is, and going into 26, what's at the top of your mind right now, Larry?
Will we avoid World War III? The Donald Trump, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because, basically I agreed with his basic message about America first and keeping the United States out of needless foreign wars. And, he talked a good game about that, but now that he is in power, he's undermining what he claimed was his primary objective. But not only that, we saw just today with his comments about the death of Rob Reiner and his wife, how out of touch politically Donald Trump is. Trump had an opportunity with this horrific death of Reiner, getting killed by your own kid. And you got to take some responsibility for the kid being as screwed up as he was. But it's still, you wouldn't wish that on any parent to undergo that. And while, I had, strong disagreements with a lot of Rob Reiner's political positions, I thought held him in high regard for his talent and his, the kinds he made iconic movies. And you could, in terms of the kinds of movies he made, you could probably rank him in the top 10 of directors of all time. At least really producing some quality material.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, Larry. And we'll finish your statement on that. But I did a Google search this morning. There was a period where Rob Reiner, he was really fire with movies that were hits. I mean, some great movies from my childhood, which included, we were going to do this at the end, but might as well do it now. Misery, Few Good Men,
Princess
Bride, When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
And his father
was it Ghosts of Mississippi or?
Yep. Ghosts of Mississippi, he did. He made some bad movies too, but they all make bad ones. But I mean, just Princess Bride, Few Good Men. What else did I say? Few Good Men, Princess Bride. He did A Sure Thing, which was a John Cusack early film from like early 80s. And I'm blanking out what I just said, but those are phenomenal movies.
Yeah. Misery.
Misery was the other one.
That's just try not to mingle, politics with art. He was, but disagree with his politics, but that doesn't mean you say you celebrate in his death. And here's what Donald Trump said was, instead of just expressing profound sorrow and sadness over the tragic death of both Rob Reiner and his wife at the hands, allegedly, of their own son, Trump had to talk about Trump derangement syndrome and the crazy politics of Rob Reiner. And it's like, dude, shut up. Don't you know when to keep your mouth shut? This is not appropriate. Doesn't make you look presidential at all, because it made it all about him. And unfortunately, anybody that's lived with an aging parent knows that as the brain becomes a little more rigid, the parent sort of devolves. We're pretty good at learning how to put up a facade to hide a lot of our true feelings from time to time. But as you get older, that ability to present that facade sort of disappears. And then the real person starts coming out. And sometimes that real person can be pretty ugly, pretty nasty in what they say and how they act. And frankly, I think that's what we're seeing with Donald Trump now. Instead of, he had a great opportunity to have taken the high road and said, life is too short to be filled with anger towards one another, and the passing of Rob Reiner and his wife in such a tragic way should remind us all as Americans that we need to care for one another, to do something that would have been uplifting and uniting. No. He didn't go as far as the leftists did, celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, which was just completely reprehensible. But it is, like I said, he missed a chance to demonstrate some true leadership, and instead of being a leader, he just went for some cheap political shots.
I sometimes wonder with all this, and this was another example that you talk about, that post he put on Truth Social, and I'm like, are they doing this on purpose just to get a rise out of people? Because it's gonna piss people off.
Yeah.
So was it done intentionally? Does he even write his own stuff anymore, I wonder?
No, yeah. It makes you wonder if he's got some, idiot 20-year-old saying this. Did Rob Reiner say anything about the Charlie Kirk murder?
I don't know. I can try to look it up really quick while we're talking.
Yeah. I'm just want to see if he applied sort of the same standard. Yeah. Reiner was classy on it. He described it as shocking, unacceptable violence and emphasized that it should never happen to anyone, regardless of politics. Kudos to Reiner. So you may disagree with his political views. But we ought to be able to disagree over a variety of issues. But it was really sort of shameful what Trump did with that True Social post.
Is this an example to you how, as a society, we are so broken that there's no coming back? When you hear, before you answer that, when I hear people say, "Oh, we need to just sit down and have more dialogue," and I say to myself when I hear that, this country's so far gone.
Well, it can come back, and we've got historical examples of it coming back. Not necessarily the United States, but that's where I see in Russia a lot of hope. What Russia has experienced over the course of the last 35 years should be really give people hope of that changes can occur. Because when you go back to the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's society descended into it was like it was dumped into a septic tank full of feces. It was just awful. People with credentials, with professions, were unable to find work. The lifespan dropped dramatically. Suicides went up. Crime went up. Everything was just broken.
Were you there at all during that time, Larry? Were you there
No,
at all?
never. Matt Taibbi was, and he described. He said, he'd even see bodies on the street. Not a lot, but it's to walk around a major city like Moscow and to see dead people on the street was shocking. Well, jump ahead. Well, actually, so Putin takes over in 1999. 9 years later, he's sitting down in Moscow with Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Now, Solzhenitsyn is a controversial figure in some parts of Russia, but Putin welcomed Solzhenitsyn back to Russia, and Solzhenitsyn actually was complimentary of Putin. Well, 20 years prior to that, 30 years prior to that, Solzhenitsyn was basically declared an enemy of the state of the Soviet Union. And, so here he is now sitting down with a former KGB officer and having a very cordial conversation. So that's what I mean, that you get this transformation where they go from a hellish sort of environment in politics and economics to turning it around completely. So today, when you go to like Moscow or St. Petersburg or really anywhere in Russia, you've got a country that's prosperous, a middle class that's growing, unemployment extremely low. In fact, some would argue they need more people to take the jobs that are out there that need employees. So that's why I look at Russia and said, so whatever problems we have right now in the United States, they are surmountable. We can change. But part of the change requires, how someone like Donald Trump acts. And, I know I irritate some people, so why are you so anti-Trump? His remarks regarding Rob Reiner's death are just so lacking in class. They are crass, and it just reflects a complete tone. He's tone deaf completely to the environment, and it's sad. So I believe he could have. Like I said, there was a high road. There were some things he could have said that would have been unifying. That say, hey, just leave it at Rob Reiner was an incredible talent, and despite his wealth and fame, he and his wife discovered that the scourge of drugs is something that was tearing their family apart. I mean, that he could have tied it into his current campaign against Venezuela, for example, just to say, hey, this is another example of how these drugs are destroying our country. Not that I'm advocating what he's doing in Venezuela, but I'm just saying, they're not even thinking that kind of way. It's just pathetic.
What is Venezuela all about, Larry? Well,
I think oil, and I think trying to limit foreign involvement in this hemisphere. But it is, I think it's the way Trump is pursuing it. It's going to backfire, and if anything, I think it will end up further weakening U.S. influence in this hemisphere, not strengthen it.
yeah, the oil aspect, and I'm hearing different, so much information out there right now, where the oil is not good quality oil. So why would they want that? I've also heard the idea of is this, and I'm probably getting this wrong, but is this an opportunity to remove China and Russia from the region? But then I've also heard the idea that Russia, United States, China, that will be the union at some point, and this is working towards that. I don't know. I don't know what to make of all this. London,
Well,
City of London.
yeah, let's start with the oil. It's a heavy crude. Um, I understand that refineries in the United States are set up to process that kind of oil, in particular, to refine it. So, from that standpoint, if the United States got its hands on it, we'd be in a unique position to be able to turn it into fuel. Um, it's possible from a planning standpoint that the Trump administration may be concerned about the possibility that the Persian Gulf could get shut down because if war breaks out again between Israel and Iran, that could put that whole flow of oil there at risk. So in anticipation of that possibility, get control of the Venezuelan oil. You know, this quote, I'll call it false concern about Chinese influence and involvement in Latin America. Well, hello, it's been that way for more than 25 years. I mean, I really don't know what these people are. They're acting, they're acting like they've discovered, oh my God, the sun comes up in the east. Did you know that? Every morning. Yeah. Um, I did a lot of work in Panama on product counterfeiting. Uh, and the Chinese were the major producers of counterfeit items. Whether we're talking clothing, rice cookers, household appliances, televisions, you name it, they could reproduce it. But, they're very active in the Cologne Free Trade Zone. Chinese companies owned at the north end of the Panama Canal is the area called Cologne. But on the coast, there are at least three major ports, where container ships come in and the 40-foot containers are lifted off the ships and, put on trucks or stacked up in a yard somewhere. Uh, China owned all of those and has been managing them for well over 25 years at least. So this quote discovery that the Chinese are here, well, hello. So they are so deeply embedded in these societies that it's not going to be easy. The United States is not going to be able to, quote, remove China or force China out of this hemisphere. China is now economically integrated with Brazil in an important way, and I don't see Brazil walking away from that relationship. And similarly, I think the Chinese are involved, with Peru, Ecuador, in particular. I don't know about Chile, but at least Peru and Ecuador. So, whatever efforts to, quote, force Venezuela away from China, and Venezuela as well has relations with Russia and with Iran. So this is a little bit of a belated effort, but you get back to how is the United States going to enforce that or make it happen? Or what, are we going to invade on the ground to bring about a regime change? We don't have the military strength to do that. Venezuela physically is 3 times the size of Vietnam in terms of land mass, and it's just as the terrain is just as rugged and difficult as anything in Vietnam. They've got triple canopy jungle in Venezuela. They've also got mountains, significant mountains. So and when you consider the fact that the United States tried and failed to defeat the North Vietnamese, U.S. had more than 500,000 soldiers on the ground as in April of 1969. Our current army total globally is 470,000. So, you know, we don't even have the manpower in place if we were going to go to Venezuela to, quote, conquer Venezuela. So, I rule out any kind of ground operation. Even if you insert a special operations team to go on the assassinate Maduro, then you install some figurehead like Machado, that Corina Machado, is that her name? The terrain favors guerrillas, insurgents, and Venezuela will become a hornet's nest, and there's not a lot the United States will be able to do to quell the violence there.
And the narco boats, the drugs.
Yeah.
That's the other thing you're hearing, the fentanyl and that. And
No, there's no fentanyl. Number one, there's no fentanyl coming out of Venezuela. Fentanyl comes out of Mexico, courtesy of the Chinese. The Chinese role in synthetic drugs has been, it's the entrepreneurial side of the Chinese on that front. I looked it up. Every year, the Bureau of International Narcotics and Legal Affairs, known as INL, at State Department, puts out a report. It's called the INCSR, INCSR, International Narcotics Country Reports on Terrorism. I forget what the whole acronym stands for. But in that, it reports on, what the drug activities are. And Venezuela has, it's been a transshipment point. Some of the, for primarily marijuana and cocaine. And about 40 to 50% of it, depending on the year, reportedly goes to the United States, and the other 40-50% goes to Europe and Africa. So, there's money to be made off of it for sure, but there's no justification to kill these people. Cops in Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, they don't get to sit and they're watching a drug deal go down and they get out and then step out of the car and shoot the people for exchanging, buying and selling drugs. Can't do that. Now, if you go out and try to arrest people that are engaged in that kind of activity and they pull a gun on you, yeah, then you can shoot them. But that's not what's going on here. None of these vessels are described as having firearms on board that were used to shoot at U.S. military or law enforcement sources.
do you see anything coming out of this, or is this going to be a lot of talk at this point?
We keep hearing about any day now, any day where America's going to launch an attack, any day now. Stand by, it's coming. I don't think we will ultimately, simply because there's nothing we can do militarily that's going to provide a quick, clean fix. If our goal is to remove Maduro and replace him with a government that has some measure of popularity and is seen as legitimate, I don't see how we accomplish that. Because there's always, whoever replaces, if Maduro is replaced, then they will always be under the cloud of they're nothing more than a U.S. puppet. And there are plenty of people in Central and South America that despise the United States for its past actions.
So many different countries to talk about right now. I mean, over the weekend, Syria. The soldiers that were killed in Syria.
Hey, remember Trump wiped out ISIS, right? It's back. And, who was a member of ISIS? Oh, that would be al-Shara, formerly known as Muhammad al-Jawani, the current president of Syria. He's a member of ISIS. then he, quote, evolved. And his evolution was under, in my belief, under the direction of the CIA. CIA and Brits. They cultivated him, and you know, particularly when he was head of the Hayat Tahrir Hashem, that was his last jihadist organization. And so now these two soldiers and this translator killed. I wonder what they were doing. I haven't seen a good report on, you know, were they like standing on the street and this guy just walks up and whacks them? I don't know. Or were they involved in some other operation? But it it underscores that we're going to play the terrorist card again. We got to go wipe out. We got to go wipe out those Muslims. Oh, you mean the ones that we installed in power in Damascus? Yeah. Good luck with that.
Then you got what occurred on the Black Sea, off the coast of Turkey, I believe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there've been several ships attacked with these maritime drones, and so Russia warned them, you do this, we're going to basically close down the port. And after the last attack, Russia attacked a Turkish flagged ship that reportedly was supposed to have gone to another port like Romania, but then secretly diverted into Odessa, and the Russians took it out. It was reportedly carrying some sensitive military equipment, and it was Turkish flag, and Russia was sending the Turks a message. If you're going to continue to try to supply weapons, arms, whatever, to the Ukrainians, we'll blow the hell out of your ship. Now, in response to that, the Turks have called upon the Ukrainians to stop provoking the Russians and stop attacking Russian ships.
Will that calm things down, do you think, or will it accelerate?
No, it's the Russian offensive is accelerating. It's not diminishing, and Russia's not going to back down. So this will, we're going to see. This is like the end of an opera, crescendo, building noise and activity, and the fat lady starting to sing. So it is. I think Ukraine's days are numbered.
Can you believe that this has lasted as long as it has? That's still going.
Pardon?
Can you believe that this is still going?
Yeah, I thought it would have ended much sooner. But one of the drawbacks was Russia did not mobilize fully for war. That's why it was called a special military operation. They only partially mobilized, and then in the course of that, have not been under any kind of pressure to rapidly build up forces and deploy them. They've been content to pursue this strategy of attrition, which has been very effective. And now they've reached really, Clausewitz called it a culmination point. It's this moment at which the forces that Russia have overmatch that of Ukraine. Same with weapons, same with intelligence. Russia has advantages on all fronts, and is now able to press forward with those advantages. And Ukraine has nothing in its arsenal to stop the Russians.
And all these young people died, and for what? What was all this for?
Well, NATO wanted to get its claws, hooks into Russia, and then to tear Russia away from having any relationship with China. That all has failed.
Well, and that's the whole thing too. With when I see things in regards to a possibility of a China, Russia, United States union, where each would govern their respective hemispheres or regions. I think to myself, I'm like, the question I have in my head is, why would Russia and China want to partner with the United States at this point?
Oh, no, exactly. They've for Russia and China to want to get together with the United States would be like a guy wanting a guy or a gal, pick whichever sex you prefer, who's in an abusive relationship and wanting to get back with a partner who tried to kill him. whether it was male or female. And that's, both Russia and China, you look at the United States and recognize the mentality of the United States is not one that celebrates or embraces collaboration and cooperation. We prefer domination, being in control, and telling others what to do, and having leverage to make them do what we want them to do. And that's not how Russia and China operate. A completely different mentality, especially among the Russians. I got some insight into that when I was in Russia last meeting. I had a good long conversation with Vyacheslav Fetisov, aka Slava. Slava was a legendary hockey player in Russia and the Soviet Union. To put him in parallel to the United States, he'd be like Michael Jordan was to basketball. Fetisov is the same to hockey, just an iconic player. And as we talked, he described what it was like. He was the NHL had been trying to recruit Soviet hockey players for quite some time. And so finally in like 1988, they got their first one. And the one that they really wanted, the second one, was Fetisov. And so he got drafted, I guess, by the New Jersey Devils. And so he came to the United States and played 2 years with them. Then he got traded, moved to Detroit, played for the Red Wings, and there with the Red Wings, he brought in four other Soviet players, former Soviet players came, and they won 2 straight Stanley Cups. And Fetisov said, look, he said he was shocked when he came and saw it. He says, American style, Canadian style hockey was all about the individual, who was the best shooter, the best skater, who could, move the puck. It's sort of like Wayne Gretzky focused. Whereas Fetisov, he says, I come out of a system where no matter how good you are, you got to play as a team. You got to work as a team. It's a collaborative effort. That mentality is so different from what the West is about domination, the single star, the Babe Ruth, the hero. Whereas the Russians are much more collaborative. And so that's a conflict between two systems. And, I think the Russians have finally decided getting back in a relationship with the United States on any kind of real serious, deep relationship. I don't think that's going to happen because we are too messed up as a country in terms of our psychology, our approach to the world, that the Russians could never trust us.
Well, and I was talking to a guy this morning when I was at the gym in regards to China, and he was older guy saying that China's the enemy, and I think to myself, as time goes on, maybe they aren't the enemy. We've been sold that they are, and Russia too, right? These are the good guys, bad guys. Everybody wants to be in a superhero movie, Larry.
Well, hey, we have seen the enemy, and he is us. You just step back and let's be objective. China's the enemy, huh? How many countries has China invaded? Hell, in the last 80 years, it wasn't China that invaded Japan. It was Japan that invaded China. The only country that China has fought in the last 36 years was Vietnam, and that was in response to Vietnam's attack on Cambodia and China's relationship with Cambodia to help protect them. Other than that, China's been like a stay-at-home mom, building up itself. It's fascinating that China now, you go back 50 years ago when Richard Nixon opened up, so-called opened up China, that China and the United States entered into a relationship. I believe the literacy rate in China in 1972 was something like around 40, 50%, maybe 60%. Today, they have a universal literacy. Whereas in the United States, we used to be well over 98%. Today, we're at 79%. We're going the opposite direction. So I said, we got to get out of this mentality that we have to fight everybody. No, we can get along with them. They can be our partners. That's the mentality we need.
Well, and you just said you were in Russia. I mean, you walked around. What was your experience and observations there?
It's a very big, beautiful city, clean, orderly, safe, and just a fun place to visit.
Would you live there?
Yeah, I could see um, if I was younger and just starting out in life, definitely that would be a place to for some opportunity because they need workers, uh, and it's really a remarkable society. They have rediscovered their Christian roots. I don't think they ever actually lost them. The communists tried to stomp it out, and it failed. Uh, the churches, the clergy remain strong, and the people, the religious faith of the majority of Russians is something that, again, fuels their nationalism.
Well, I think too, and you could speak to this because you were there, and also with China, their infrastructure. Like these countries are better at building up their infrastructure, and this is what this guy and I were going back and forth with. I said, look at the United States, it's a mess. And okay, let's take the biggest cities, New York, L.A. They're a mess.
Yeah. Well, that just something as simple. Pepe Escobar just he's done a couple of videos lately of his trip through the following the old Silk Road, the new Silk Road in China, going from the eastern part to the western part of China. And he described he was out in this desert, which is right in the middle of China, and he was getting 5G internet, Wi-Fi service, out in the middle of the friggin' desert. Well, I live 35, 40 minutes south of Tampa, Florida, in Bradenton, which is right next to Sarasota, and I can barely get one bar on my cell phone. Well, I got two bars today um, in this neighborhood, which is, we're literally a mile and a half from I-75, the major north-south freeway on the west coast of Florida. So it's just, we like to sit around and be proud of it. We're proud of our mediocrity. We've become, I would argue, today, China is like Mozart, and we're like Salieri. Anybody that's seen the movie, of Amadeus, the sort of the villain of it was Salieri, and he was just a mediocre musician, and driven crazy by the talent of Mozart. Well, right now, the talent in the world is China, not the United States.
What do you see? What does 2026 look like to you in relation to your work and your analysis?
Yeah, I think um, we're going to see BRICS strengthen and become gain more independence from the Western financial system. I think we're going to see the Western financial system run into some real uh, troubled times. That the economies in the United States and Europe will experience significant losses, and this all lead to pressure that'll help bring to an end organizations like NATO. So it's going to be a time. It's not going to be a time of peace. It's going to be chaos. On top of that, the the politics are going to become more intense in the United States, which means less is going to get done, not more, because you see the midterms on the horizon now, just 12 months away, 11 months away. The Democrats will be less likely to compromise, and the Republicans will be doing everything they can to try to position themselves to win re-election. So, which means nothing's going to get done. It'll be chaos.
What is your take on I mean, I know you and I will speak before then, probably many times, but I have taken I mean, I still follow it because I kind of have to, but the midterms to me, the Republicans, as we sit here today, at the end of December, mid-December, they don't deserve to win at this point.
Yeah, yeah. What have they done?
That's what I said, Larry, and people call me a doomer for that. They're like, if you don't change your rhetoric, you're gonna lose the midterms. I'm like, I've heard that. I've heard that shit now for I don't know however many cycles that we've gone through this.
Excuse me.
Pardon my language.
Candace, you don't look yourself. I thought you were a beautiful black woman. You look like this white guy from Arizona. What's going on here? Sorry.
No, but how many times do you hear this stuff?
Yeah, I'm referencing, if you listen to this knucklehead Tim Pool, he was screaming, ranting, and raving about Candace, and, you're going to make us lose the midterms. God, so, hey, congratulations, dude. You and Candace Owens, you are the powerhouses determining the future of the Republican Party. Who knew? Huh? Who knew?
Most regular people don't know. I mean, they might know who she is, but they don't listen to it. That's why I've heard I think it was Robert Barnes on Twitter on X talking about, the jury pool, and other people have said it too, that this is going to impact the jurors. I have to believe, maybe I'm wrong, that they're not listening to Candace Owens every night.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter whether it affects the jury pool, regardless of which jury they choose. It's the evidence that is going to be the problem, because there are so many ways to poke holes in the story that, again, the ones responsible for putting the case together are these local authorities in Utah. And I guarantee you're not looking at the best and the brightest. You're not looking at the shrewdest legal or law enforcement minds. And whatever help the FBI offered is just completely irrelevant, because you got a bunch of knuckleheads running the FBI now. I mean, good God. Kash Patel and Bongino, they ought to be fired.
Did you have any expectations for those two when they got in?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I thought, well, now Bongino's going to have a chance to really, instead of just talking big, to do something. And then I thought Kash Patel, knowing what he knows from the investigation of Russiagate, would be all over it and trying in terms of bringing the evidence that would lead to the convictions of John Brennan and Jim Clapper and James Comey. No, they're ridiculous. They're just they're a couple of lightweights.
What do you think happened?
I don't know. I don't know if they got paid off. If they got threatened. But they've certainly become part of the Israeli Protection Society. It's not America first; it's Israel first.
And Tulsi?
She's in a weak position. She doesn't really control a big budget. She's not. The CIA budget's larger than her own office, and so she doesn't get to make decisions for the CIA, and Radcliffe and company run circles around her. So she's, I found it funny. I thought it was really a joke. But about a month ago, she went on She was speaking somewhere saying the United States we're not doing regime change anymore. Saying that as these ships line up off the coast of Venezuela to engage in regime change. So I don't know if she was just trying to derail that, but in any event, she's not a political force to be reckoned with within the Trump administration.
Well, summarize 2025 for you then, Larry. My last question.
Been a bad year for the Ukrainians. Been a good year for the Russians. And the Russians are going to keep pressing on. And the military situation for Ukraine is going to become more dire with each passing week.
Middle East?
Unfortunately, the Palestinians are going to continue to die. Let's admit that the Zionists are one of the biggest anti-Semitic forces in the world. We unfortunately conflate anti-Semitism with being anti-Jewish, but the Palestinians are Semitic people, as are the Arabs. The Arabs are also Semites. And since so much of the Zionism rests on the promises to Abraham, the father of Isaac, who is the father of Jacob, and Jacob was Israel that had 12 sons. Well, the descendants of Abraham include Arabs, include Palestinians. And genetically speaking, these Palestinians, they are Semites. They are closer in terms of DNA and biology to the original inhabitants of that land than is Bibi Netanyahu, who's a European. He's a Polak, Polish descent. Not a lot of Middle Eastern blood there. They'll continue, the Zionists will continue their acts of terrorism against the Palestinian people. The world will continue to ignore it. And but the situation there will remain unsettled. I doubt, but wouldn't be the first time I was wrong, that Israel's going to run the risk of attacking Iran again, because they short of using a nuclear weapon, even if they used a nuclear weapon, it would not wipe out Iran, kill a lot of people, cause significant damage, but Iran's got missile systems scattered all over the country that Israel simply can't take out. So, barring that, I think you're going to see Israel face significant challenges with the economy continuing to stagnate and people abandoning Israel who no longer want to live under the threat or cloud of future retaliation by Iran.
I got a notification here that just came across from Truth Social saying pro-Palestinians arrested for LA New Year's Eve terror plot, plan to test bombs in Mojave Desert.
Yeah, propaganda. This. If we want to talk about the biggest victims of terrorism, are the Palestinians. The definition of terrorism is the use of violence against civilians for political purposes. That's exactly what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people. It is not only genocide, it's mass terrorism.
And one final thing I want to say, what occurred in Australia, wasn't it Netanyahu that shortly after said we need to crack down on social media? We need to crack down on more censorship, more censorship, more censorship.
Yeah. Well, and plus, let's have more gun control too, remember? Except they banned owning guns in Australia. How'd that work out? This notion that we have to restrict people's freedom in order to make them safe, that's just a convenient excuse for authoritarian behavior. That's all it is.
Where can people find you, Larry?
Sonar21.com. That's the place.
As always, I enjoy our conversations. Thank you again for always making yourself available for me. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I look forward to talking to you in 26.
Yes, sir. Boy, that was a quick hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, I could have kept going, but I didn't want to. I don't want to chew up your whole day.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, man. Hey, listen, same to you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Mic drop.